Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. Turmoil in the Middle East has created a security and migration crisis which threatens the stability of Europe and the wider world. Syria's war is, of course, at the heart of the problem, but so too is Libya's prolonged descent into chaos. My guest is Aref Ali Nayed, Libyan ambassador to the United Arab Emirates and a senior diplomat involved in efforts to end the post-Gaddafi internal conflict. Can Libya's warring parties join forces to save the country? Ambassador Aref Ali Nayed, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Let's start with the most immediate news on Libya. There are talks in Morocco between the different warring factions inside your country. There is talk of a breakthrough, an agreement imminent. What can you tell me?
We are quite excited. We are in the very last chapter of a very prolonged, protracted, very difficult negotiation process that was ably led by Bernardino Leon, the special representative of the UN to Libya. And we are literally in the very last stage. If the signing happens, we should be able to form a national accord government very shortly.
Earlier in the summer, Mr. Leon seemed to believe he was very close to a deal, and then the deal didn't happen because the so-called government in Tripoli, the GNC regime, refused to acknowledge that outline deal. So why should we be confident that this time is different?
Because even in the last time, there was still a signing off with initials that was absolutely important and significant. And without that signing off, there would not have been this last episode of the talks. I do believe that this is the very last one. Mr. Leon himself and world powers have made it clear that the deadline of 20th of September is the final deadline for this.
I am very aware that I interviewed you not so long ago, well, in fact, pretty much 4 years ago, in fact, and at that time, the Gaddafi regime was in the process of being toppled, and you were extraordinarily confident that Libya was on a path to freedom, democracy, pluralism. You told me that this was the dawn of a new era. Why should I believe you now, with this new optimism you've got, when you were so very wrong 4 years ago?
First of all, it's because I believe hope is an absolute must for humanity to go forward. And secondly, given the 42 years of tyranny that Libya experienced under Gaddafi, it is not surprising that it takes 4 years for us to get things at least off to a good start. So I believe that such momentous historical changes are always difficult. But we must always hope.
Well, yeah, but there's hope and then there's being realistic. Your words to me 4 years ago: tyranny will never happen again. Corruption will never happen again. One tendency overpowering all of the others will never happen again in Libya. Well, all of those things have happened many times since, and what we see today is that the people who really have the power in Libya are the men with guns who are answerable to no democratic authority.
Well, first of all, in these last 4 years, several people and movements and ideological trends have tried to have an absolute tyranny over Libya, and guess what? They all failed. There has been no tyranny of the centralized type that Gaddafi imposed on the Libyan people for 42 years.
Well, no, there isn't centralized tyranny, there is local tyranny,
yes,
which in some ways is even more anarchic. You could go to a town like Sirte today, and who is really in control? The truth is, it's the gunmen loyal to Islamic State, to the Daesh.
Yes, well, the ISIS topic is something that we need to return to. However, I need to tell you the following, is that no state can be built without checks and balances between multiple forces. There will always be tension in Libya. The important thing is to have a harmonized tension on which you can build a state. It takes time. Negotiation is not always with words. That's what we're trying to do now in Morocco. There has been a protracted attempt by many people to take over the last 4 years. They all failed, and now everybody is recognizing that they have to somehow live together and somehow make a country together.
Let's talk about how that might work in detail, but before we do, I think it's really important to reflect on why things have been so disastrous in the last 4 years in Libya. If you could put your finger on one reason why your hopes were dashed for so many years, what would it be?
It would be that the young, inspirational visions of a transformed Libya were not matched by organization and management that was befitting of state building. It was an enthusiastic uprising that overthrew tyranny, but we didn't have neither the managerial skills nor the organizational skills to actually go into state building. And unfortunately also, we've had ideological trends that were the only organized parties who try to basically take over the country and, in a sense, hijack the revolution.
Would it be fair to say that people like you, secularists in Libya, also failed completely to reach out to different brands of Islamist thinking inside the country?
Well, I'm not a secularist. I'm actually a Muslim theologian.
I know, but you're the kind of theologian who writes books about cooperation and living with Christian communities, for example.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're the kind of Muslim who...
I have lived in 25 years of interfaith dialogue. However, I would like to stress that the Libyan people is a Muslim people, and that's why Libya will be a Muslim country. However, what's most problematic in Libya is our fascist trends that use Islam, and it's actually a phenomenon that we see across the region, and that's how ISIS arises. It's basically a neo-fascism using Islamic terminology. So I think perhaps if there is a failure, yes, we did fail to give young people an alternative narrative, an alternative discourse of state building that gives prosperity to everyone. But it is a hard task, and it is a task that no one man can perform, something that we, women and men of Libya, have to build together.
You've, in a sense, been very frank in addressing the question in terms of the internal failings of the post-Gaddafi political generation. I understand that and appreciate that, but you haven't mentioned the degree to which Libya's been a playground for proxy forces as well within the Arab world. And you must know, surely you must know this better than most, because you're the ambassador in the United Arab Emirates, and one could argue that the way in which the UAE has tried to play politics in Libya against the interests, for example, of Qatar, which has also been playing politics in Libya, that has been another destabilizing factor in your country. I
think the entire region, the Middle Eastern region, is going through a historical dialectic that is of the utmost seriousness. It is a dialectic regarding what Islam is, who we are, where we're going. And of course, different countries have taken different approaches to this, there is no doubt. And that this is reflected in Libya itself, of course this is the case. However,
if I may interrupt,
yeah.
What you're saying is interesting. Would you say here and now that the way in which the UAE and Egypt on one side and Qatar on the other side have meddled in the politics of Libya in the last 4 years has been damaging and detrimental?
I wouldn't say meddled. What I would say is that there is a huge struggle in the Middle East between what I would call the traditionalist narrative of Al-Azhar and like-minded institutions of Sunni Islam that is actually quite moderate, rooted in the area, and the Muslim Brotherhood and a more ideologically driven, politicized Islam. This struggle in the region, of course, will reflect in Libya, and what happens in Libya will reflect upon other countries. It isn't a matter of one country meddling into the other countries. I think what we're seeing is a struggle that's actually regional.
But it is sometimes a question of out-and-out meddling. For example, in the summer of 2014, it is widely believed, and I'd be interested to know what you think, but it is widely believed that the UAE, operating in conjunction with the Egyptians, bombed positions of the Islamist GNC Libya Dawn group in and around Tripoli, for example.
Well,
now, can you confirm that happened?
The UAE and Egypt denied this.
No, I know,
and
but
the State Department denied this.
I know for political purposes they denied it, but you can perhaps now tell me the truth.
Look, I'll tell you the truth, is that as far as I know, it is not clear who did that. And as far as I know, it is something that has had no effect to actually win the battle for either side. It actually didn't have any effect. So I don't know. It's something that has nothing to do with my embassy or myself.
Well, you're maintaining your position as a diplomat with that answer, I must say. But let us talk about the diplomacy of today. You've said you have high hopes that this deal can now be brokered. So the de facto reality of two rival governments claiming to represent Libya will no longer be the case. There'll be a national unity government. Now, for that to happen, there has to be the building of an awful lot of trust between those two rival camps. You, personally, don't appear to have any trust in the Tripoli regime at all, because earlier this year you described them, the Libya Dawn GNC group, you described them as, quote, a bunch of thugs. They are not partners in the fight against terrorism, they are part of the problem.
Well, I must say I trust in God and I trust in the Libyan people. As for factions within Libya, I trust factions when they are kept honest by other factions in the country.
So you think you can strike a deal with, quote unquote, a bunch of thugs?
Well, it happens every day throughout the world. It doesn't mean that you have to like the person across the table when you're negotiating, but you have to like your country enough to cut a deal for stability. You
also surely have to be big enough to say, maybe I was wrong, maybe they're not thugs, maybe they just have a different political perspective from me. Are you ready to say that?
Well, I really don't want to be dragged into adjectives. We are in a very sensitive period of negotiation. However, what I can tell you is when people attack airports and attack oil depots and attack cities and move and uproot populations like to the tune of half a million people from their homes, that's thuggish behavior, let's put it that way.
See, I'm just wondering whether there really is the trust to believe this deal is going to work. I just wonder whether you've been pushed into it by the Obama administration, because we know when he gathered together a lot of Gulf leaders in May and he made Libya one of the key points to discuss, he made it quite plain that to both the UAE and to the Qataris at the time, he said, I want a deal in Libya which is inclusive. Is that why you're now on the brink of signing this deal?
I think we're at the brink of signing the deal because everyone realized that there is no military solution to this. That everyone tried to actually use force to actually exert their will over the entirety of the territory of Libya. The fact of the matter is everybody failed. And because of this, people realized that they need to sit with each other to try and find an amicable way. Yes, this is forced, but I think it is more forced because of the distribution of power more than by any foreign power.
But have the Americans been pushing very hard for this inclusive deal to be done?
Well, everybody has been supporting such a negotiation, ranging from the Qataris to the Emiratis to the Turks to the Egyptians to the Americans. But I don't think any superpower imposed this on anyone.
Now, Ambassador, very interesting words you just said to me. You said there is no military solution. That's why we're all at the negotiating table. Do you think that the commander in charge of the Tobruk government, that is your government's forces, that is Mr. Haftar, Khalifa Haftar, do you think he believes there's no military solution?
I think that I cannot speak for him. You can ask him yourself. However, I think there is a realization that there is an absolute need for a negotiated settlement.
Yeah, let's consider then Mr. Haftar's words. He said, I am betting that there will be a military solution. He told the New Yorker magazine this year, there will be no dialogue with terrorism. The only thing to say about terrorism is that we will fight it till it's defeated and that we have, quote unquote, purified the country. This is your military commander speaking.
Well, you cannot hold me responsible for everything Mr. Haftar says. However, let me put it this way.
You speak for your government.
I speak for my government, but I don't speak for Mr. Haftar.
Mr. Haftar is your military commander.
He is the military commander of the Libyan army, yes. Okay.
Well, that is my point. You have a military commander, the guy who is responsible for developing your military strategy, who is betting on a military solution and says his aim is to purify the country.
Look, read the agreement that we're signing or have already initialed in Morocco, and you shall see that fighting terrorism is an integral part of that agreement, to which everybody signs and to which everyone agrees. Meaning, those persons in Tripoli who do sign on this document will be committed to fighting terrorism.
Well,
and
so
I don't
will the
think,
persons in Tobruk.
of course, and that is something that can unify us. I don't think that there is any Libyan who will argue that ISIS should not be fought.
No, but let's just stick with Mr. Haftar for a moment. This is what one Obama administration official, a senior figure, said. The US government has nothing to do with Haftar. Haftar's killing people. He says he's targeting terrorists, but his definition of that is way too broad. He is a vigilante. Haftar's going to have to go, isn't he?
Well, I cannot speak for the American government or comment on what American officials will tell you. However, the vigilante-like behavior has been rampant in Libya for a good number of years now. So it's what I can tell you is the following, that there is terrorism, and it's time that we stop the denials. Part of the problem we had with Tripoli was not only for many, many months there was denial from Tripoli that terrorism existed, there was even a condoning of it and the helping of it. And that was the issue. If Tripoli now signs on an agreement committed to fighting ISIS, fighting terrorism, we are united in this fight.
But my point is, why would Tripoli trust in your good intentions as long as you insist that Mr. Haftar is your military commander? They regard him as a war criminal. His own record suggests that he's intent on military solutions. My question to you is it time to remove Haftar as a sign of your government's good intent?
And the negotiation, as it happens now in Morocco, part of the negotiation is this question, and part of the negotiation is the question about figures from the other side, who attacked airports and who committed war crimes and who were listed a couple of months ago to go to the Security Council, and now we find them on the negotiating table. So it is a genuine question that has to be negotiated about.
Is it? However, so to be clear, hang on, we must move on, but just to be clear, then you're saying that Khalifa Haftar's continuation as military commander of your Tobruk forces is now on the negotiating table as something that is...
No person is being negotiated about by name. What is being negotiated about is what happens to all the key positions, military or civilian. And part of the negotiation is this question. Will all these positions become vacant as soon as the new government comes to power? Will they be populated again? It's something that hasn't been decided yet.
It is one of the decisive... the deal's almost done. It's clearly not done at all.
It is a crucial part of closing the deal.
Which hasn't been agreed yet.
This is the nature of negotiation. I mean, most critical things... Well, I'm just wondering
whether we should take your optimism seriously. But let's move on, because clearly you're telling me no decision yet taken as to whether Haftar can continue. So let's move on. Let's talk about Islamic State. You've referred to them already. You said recently that people don't realize how much Daesh, Islamic State, has infiltrated Libya. They've made it their gas station, their ATM machine, and their airport from which they can attack any European target. So, how on earth, in the current chaos and anarchy inside Libya, is that problem going to be addressed?
It will be addressed if we all unite in a unified government, in an accord government that has a unified army under unified command and control, and if we all fight Daesh from all sides. So if Misrata and the Zintan and the Ijdabiya-based forces, Benghazi-based, if everybody joins together, we are able to fight ISIS. But we cannot do it fragmented. We cannot do it when we are fighting each other. We have to all unite in the fight against ISIS.
Do you want Western military intervention? The United States and some allies are bombing IS positions in Iraq and in Syria. Do you want them to extend their bombing campaign to Libya?
That is something that is to be decided by the new Prime Minister, the National Accord government, and I may want to point out that it is really a three-person government rather than just a single Prime Minister, a Prime Minister plus two deputies. They will have to decide in conjunction with the National Security Council. That's going to be part and parcel of this deal. And if that government decides to ask for help, I see no shame in asking for help, because ISIS is an international phenomenon. It is a networked phenomenon, and it's ludicrous that there is no unified strategy to fight it.
Yeah, but the only thing one might say is that Western intervention in Libya going back to 2011, frankly, appears to have made the situation in Libya more dangerous, more chaotic, more anarchic than it was before. So you, I think, arguing as you have in the recent past for lifting the UN, lifting its arms embargo and seeing Western arms being sent to Libya, seems to me to be a recipe for further chaos. Those arms almost inevitably would end up in the hands of people who want to use them for malign purposes.
Well, just because an intervention was not seen through, it doesn't mean that further intervention is going to be destructive. I do not see how Libya will be able to fight ISIS by itself. It's going to need cooperation. Do
you seriously think Western powers are going to send weapons notionally to your army, maybe the army of Mr. Haftar if he continues, who knows? But do you think they're seriously going to send weaponry into Libya when weaponry that arrives in Libya, by and large, over recent years, has ended up in the hands of those who want to do harm to Western interests?
Well, if we have a unified Libyan army under unified command with international observers and consultants, I think that it is quite feasible, yes.
Let's talk about the other way in which the West sees great concern in Libya today. One is the rise in recent years of Islamic State operations in your country. The other is the way in which Libya has become a conduit for people smugglers, inviting tens, hundreds of thousands of people to use Libya as a crossing point into Europe, across the Mediterranean Sea. The Europeans are desperate to find a solution. Do you see, as a representative of the Libyan government, any possibility of ending that flow of people?
Well, you have to, any flow in nature in general happens because of a differential. And I think that we have to look at the sources of this movement. Why is it that people would leave their homes and risk their lives and the lives of their babies and kids in this crazy and desperate movement north?
Well, we know the problem, and we've rehearsed it on this program many times. My immediate question to you is
simply this. But we're not doing anything about it,
But the EU has proposals. One is to put processing centres for migrants on Libyan territory. Another is to use naval and military interventions to hit the people smugglers right offshore, off the Libyan coast. Would you support both of those?
But prior to that, don't you think that it makes a lot more sense to help the development of the source countries so that people don't have to leave their homes like that?
But that may take years to really change the situation in a country like Eritrea. In the short run, yes or no, is the Libyan government, assuming you get the national unity deal, ready to accept the EU's demand for processing centres on your soil?
I think it's not a matter of answering a demand. It's a matter of working out a unified strategy with the Libyan counterpart. When the national unity government is formed, it will have to sit with our European partners to look at this issue. But what I'm urging is that we don't look at this superficially of how to push it away from the doors of Europe as much as possible, but to actually address this at the source. Why is it that all these people are so desperately trying to get to Europe? You must try and help develop the countries from which these people come.
But you wouldn't rule out processing centres on your territory?
This is not something that I can decide. It's something that has to be decided collectively by the new government.
Interesting you say that, because the one question I've skirted around, but I'll ask you at the end, is you have been widely tipped as the nominee of the Tobruk government to be a national unity prime minister, at least one of the alternatives for the prime ministerial post. Is your name in the frame for that post?
My name is in, however, it is one of 13 names submitted by the House of Representatives. Whether that will happen or not is something that is open for discussion in the negotiations. However, what I can assure you is that no single man or woman can solve Libya's problems. Libya needs teamwork, and it needs people working together, and people who may not love each other or like each other, but who love and like Libya enough to work with each other, and to do so also in partnership with our European and international allies.
It strikes me as possibly one of the hardest jobs in international politics right now, but you're telling me you do want to be Libya's national unity prime minister?
Yes, because it is a duty that I have to, that I feel bound to.
Aref Ali Nayed, thank you for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.